I'm wearing my hat. I'm wearing my hat because it's been very, very hot today and lots of sun. So I've got my little coat on now because I'm coming out, and it's about gosh, it must be about 8 o'clock or something like that. Yeah. And so the little midges are out, so it's best to cover up. It makes good sense to cover up. It's been another stunningly beautiful day here in the west of Ireland. Bealtaine Cottage is quite dry. The ground has dried up considerably. Birds are singing. The cats are locked indoors because, of course, the two of them have just gone a little bit mental, you know, with all the birds on. So they're on lockdown, both of them, and they're not happy at all being on lockdown, but needs must. So I noticed that a lot of the clematis on this little archway that I just constructed I think it was last autumn. Yeah, I think it was last autumn, and I planted two clematis in here, in tiers on either side. You can just see. So look at these beautiful flowers now, very showy, very gorgeous. Someone was asking me about the Clematis montana, which is on the front wall of the cottage, and the best time to prune it. And I have to say that from my experience, and you know I don't follow rule books, you know I don't follow horticultural advice. I just do what I can when I can. So the idea of pruning the clematis after its flower, you know, okay, it probably makes great sense in theory, but I don't always get the time to do tasks like that at that particular time. So I prune it during the time of year when I have a little bit more time, i.e., you know, the winter. So late autumn, early winter. And there doesn't seem to be any loss on it. It seems to be quite happy with that, so there you go. Now, look who's sat in the window. Doing his best to scowl, look. Sammy Bear in Alcatraz. I shouldn't be laughing at you, Sammy Bear, you'll get cross with me. But I can't help it because you look so serious. So I let him out in about an hour or so once the birds have settled down a bit. Oh, he's really scowling at me now. He's giving me the evil eye. Jack, come on. He's possibly quite annoyed because he can see Jack. So I'm having to squeeze through these plants and bushes and trees now. A lot of the paths have started to close up, so I may need to take the secateurs and the hedge trimmers and everything else to the garden and see if I can't, at the very least, then I will keep the paths open. So, just a gorgeous evening. I'm not going to go down through the fairy wood because I really don't like going down there, you know, as the sun is beginning to set, because I really do feel like I'm an intruder. I put a blog up this morning on my website, bealtainecottage.com, and I put a link to it on yesterday's video, but I'll put another link to today's video. And the blog followed on from something that I was listening to in a podcast. Well, it wasn't actually a podcast, but I was listening to it rather than watching it. this morning, and it was about, and I'm really simplifying it now. It was about consciousness and how consciousness affects the reality that we see. And in fact, look, what I'll do is I'll actually put a link to this underneath the video. It's really mind-blowing stuff. It's very much from a physics point of view, from a science point of view. And it seems to underpin everything that I've come to understand in my own way here at Bealtaine Cottage. I'm getting a bit tongue-tied because my mind is racing just thinking about everything in this particular sort of documentary. It's like a mini documentary. So I'm not going to do it the injustice of trying to explain it. I'll put a link. Now you hear that noise? That's one of the donkeys. There's a whole heap of donkeys in this area because there's a local farmer here who absolutely loves donkeys. And it's just gorgeous to see. I think he has 7 or 8 donkeys now at this point. And he keeps them, he kind of moves them, you know, from one pasture to another. But they're just beautiful, delightful. Look at the sedge falling over the path here. So you can just about still get through that little archway over there. But you can see how much cutting back I have to do. Little apples. Yeah, you can just see the apples now beginning to form up there. I'm going to have to get someone in, I think, in the autumn to help me prune the apple trees, because they really do need to have a good prune. So I'm going to have to employ someone to come in and help me with that. Look at this, feast for the eyes, eh? Just lovely. Lots of growth now on the biomass willow. They're beginning to look very healthy. And there's more paths beginning to close in. The woodland garden has certainly taken on a real lushness this year. I know I say this every summer, oh, this is the best year ever now. But in terms of that conversion from, you know, permaculture gardens into a proper woodland, you can begin to see what it is that excites me here, because it's just incredibly woody. It's beautiful. This dappled light. So tomorrow will be day 80 of my juice fast, and still here, I'm still on it, feeling good. I think it's going to turn out to be one of the best journeys that I've ever undertaken. Certainly in terms of my own personal health, it's been amazing. It's been revitalising and reinvigorating. And it's just afforded me a new sense of well-being. Now my strimmer broke last year, so I don't have a strimmer now to strim the grass inside the stone circle. So again, I think I'm going to have to do something about that. Because I'm more than happy to keep everything outside the circle really wild, but I'd like to have just the middle bit in here, you know, trimmed down a little bit, because then you can get a perspective as well on what it represents. Look at the ferns. They're nothing less than magical. You just go through here and focus in. Look at this. Look, they're just rising up here at the back. And then here, they're just massive, massive clumps. During the Victorian era, it became very fashionable to have what was called a fernery. A fernery attached to your home. You had to be very wealthy to have a fernery. And I'll spell that for you, by the way, because some people have a problem with my accent. So it's F-E-R-N-E-R-Y, a fernery. And it became very, very fashionable. So people who were wealthy would take special holidays in the west of Ireland, especially down around Killarney, the national park in Killarney, and Kerry and County Cork, down around places like Glengarriff and County Cork, where there was this beautiful sort of just ambient temperature almost all the year round that suited the growth of very lush ferns. And so they actually collected ferns here in Ireland and brought them back and had their gardeners establish them in these beautiful big glass ferneries. And the fernery was where selected visitors would be invited to share tea or a glass of port or whatever, you know. Jack! And so here I am in this natural fernery. This little sweet chestnut tree is doing exceptionally well. Now I'm going to step out of this wild zone, because this is zone 5, my wild edge, and just cross over the little ditch and through this little wild path and down along the side of the tunnel. So the ferns are appearing everywhere. There's some there just opposite the door of the tunnel. And of course, we've got very high and very beautiful hedges here. Now this is a spirea hedge, and you can see we'll soon have flowers on this, beautiful pink sort of plumes of flowers. And there's also fuchsia here. And the reason why I've allowed this to grow slightly higher than the tunnel itself is quite simply because I'm pointing the camera now into the south. And when you do get a bad storm, I mean a really ferocious storm, it'll come in from the south and the southwest. and you know, because that's where the south of Ireland, you can down towards the Azores and places like that, and of course you've got that heat building up on the Atlantic Ocean, and so that's where the strongest winds then would come in. So having this hedge here means that if I do forget to close the door of the tunnel during the summer, and there does happen to be a bit of a storm, which can manifest very quickly, that the tunnel remains safe. And of course, as you can see, this tunnel is now in its 14th year. It's handmade with the same plastic on it as was put on 14 years ago. So it's pretty good, isn't it? Now there's a beautiful red poppy has just emerged from this cacophony of green, and everything's going on in there. Absolutely beautiful. So I got them all right, and I mowed the paths, and so that allows me at least to be able to make my way through this jungle. But I do allow it to become a jungle. In fact, I encourage that kind of jungle vibe right up to midsummer. What's that little bird? I think the blackbird. Must be. Usually it's the blackbird that makes its song at this time of the evening. I can't see it up there. I'm just looking up there at the ash tree. Now you can see the ash tree is absolutely laden with seeds. And again, it just underpins what I've been saying now over the past week or so, that this regeneration is completely rampant this year. And I'll show you what I mean. Just go down here. Now, if we look down on the ground here, you can see what looks like little seeds. In fact, they're not seeds. These are the little they're a part of the actual unfurling of the seeds, I think, from the ash tree. You see them on here, look. They're all over. And they're like little flakes. Funnily enough, the actual ash seeds. Oh, I know what they are. Yeah. These are ash seed heads that are sterile. Now these are the ones that have fallen off because there's probably too many on there. Let me see. So you can see them all the way along here. This is the first year that I've ever witnessed this. So these are sterile or unfertilised ash seeds. Now, if I point the camera up there, you can see the immense clusters of ash tree seeds. Look at this. Look at this. But this is the first year that I've ever seen so many seeds that have been discarded. And I think simply because the ash trees have produced so many potential seeds. And the insects and the bees just have not been able to pollinate them all. So this is just crazy seed time. Abundance like I've never witnessed. Now I'm wondering if anyone else is experiencing this, not necessarily in Ireland, but in the UK or in Northern Europe. I mean, look at this. There's actually a complete, look, they're everywhere. everywhere. And there's so many up there. So there is something happening, and this is what I said the other day. I said there's something afoot. There's something happening within nature. And it's not random, and it's not accidental. Mother Earth knows exactly what she's doing. There was a very interesting story came out after World War I. Those of you who are familiar with history will know that in World War I witnessed the greatest mass slaughter of young men that has ever taken place on this earth. I don't exaggerate. In fact, I'm understating it. And my great uncle Henry was one of those who died in World War I. His body was never found. And it was so extreme, the numbers of young men. I mean, there was a whole generation of young men wiped out, just wiped out. And it was such an extreme event that following World War I and up to World War II, there were more what was called spinsters, i.e. unmarried women, in the British Isles and in Europe than ever was before, because they just did not have the young eligible men to marry. And there's some amazing stats on that. And there's some amazing stories as well. So you could certainly, Google that and kind of go down that rabbit hole for a while and get an understanding of what exactly happened. But what I'm leading to is that it was very interesting what happened afterwards. There were hospitals across Britain reporting massive spikes in the number of male births. Massive spikes. In other words, this sentient being that we walk upon, that we live off, that we breathe and sleep and eat and drink, knew what had happened. Knew that she had to rebalance herself. And she did. Now, of course, in those days, people would have said, well, that was God's hand at work, etc., etc. But I'm kind of talking round in this circle back towards this link that I'm posting underneath, which takes us into quantum mechanics and quantum physics and this realm of consciousness, that there is a consciousness. So, on that note, I've got an orange light flashing again. Oh, look at these bees. Do they ever give up? They don't, do they? Working, working, working. So, on that interesting note, bless you all. Blessings from Bealtaine Cottage. Blessings from all the life that's here, in all its beauty and magic and mystery. and consciousness. Blessings.